Want to talk a little bit about free thinking and politics. Now, free thinking as an idea is often connected to organized religion. That is, it's traditionally been connected with people who outside the box in terms of religion. But I want to talk about it in light of political parties. I'm a pretty political minded person. What I mean by that is I think about politics. I think about political discourse. I think about society. I think about power. I think about all these things that come into the idea of what politics is. Um, I've been involved in politics on a very low scale. I ran on successfully to be a council candidate. I was in a political party for 5 years. I was a member of the Liberal Democrats, who incidentally have just elected Ed Davey as their new leader, but they're a greatly reduced force in British politics today. So I've barely followed their politics of late. Um, but I was a member of the Liberal Democrats for 5 years, from 2005 to 2010. I stood an election in 2008 and 2010. The second time around, I tripled my own result, but I obviously wasn't successful. It was still a useful experience in terms of low level local campaigning and so on. I left the party for a variety of reasons. I should say I initially joined the party under the leadership of Charles Kennedy because I felt that at the time I was quite against the Blair government. I'd opposed the Iraq War, and I was looking for a sort of way to vacuum my political leanings. Obviously, it wasn't going to be the Labour Party. Uh, Even then, I wasn't ready to endorse the Conservatives. So the natural option was the Liberal Democrats. But over time, I also realized there were contradictions in some of my own personal views and the positions of the party. Probably the most prominent of these was on crime. So personally, I'm quite conservative on crime. I've always been quite conservative, socially speaking, on the issue of crime. The Liberal Democrats are a left-wing party. They're very much about rehabilitation and getting to the root cause and all that side of things, more than the justice and punishment side of things, which I feel is extremely important. On that subject, I'll just say this very briefly. We've just issued, apparently, I'm often critical of British judges and I'm often critical of British justice, but it's worth noting we've just handed down, or rather, a judge in Manchester has just handed down the longest sentence ever in a murder trial, which isn't a whole life tariff, which was to the brother of the Manchester bomber, who got 55 years in prison for helping his brother plan the attack. This is unprecedented for Britain. Um, Incidentally, in New Zealand, Brenton Tarrant has also got New Zealand's highest ever penalty handed down. Not entirely related to this video, but I'm just saying it in passing. So yeah, I left the Liberal Democrats for a range of reasons. Number one was that I felt that it's not that I felt like I was a hypocrite because I never changed my views on that. I never, for example, said something that I didn't believe or pontificated on policies that I didn't agree with. I mean, push policies that I didn't agree with. So it's not so much that I was a hypocrite, it's more that there was just this contradiction in how strongly I felt about the issues around crime versus my genuine respect for the party at that time. In the end, I just decided that contradiction was becoming too much. It was one reason I left. The other reason was that Nick Clegg, when he joined the coalition government with David Cameron, I was supportive of it at the time. I felt there was no other way, and I still think Clegg was in a very difficult position because it was, people make this black and white. They say, "Oh well, he sold out." If you're the leader of the third party and you come to the closest point you have been from being out of office in about 80 years, bearing in mind the last time a Liberal had any power anywhere near Nick Clegg's level was David Lloyd George, then you're going to take it because change has happened from a position of power. So I totally understood Nick Clegg's position. but I still left the party because I felt that Clegg was giving a little bit too much overture to the Tories. For example, I didn't like some of Clegg's rhetoric on welfare. Felt it was a bit Tory light. I remember once, and this is old history, but he was asked a question about welfare, and he said, "Look, I believe in work," and I felt that was a bit Tory-esque. I didn't like it. So anyway, there was a range of things that I left the party on. So I haven't been affiliated with any party in the last 10 years. I have, my voting has been mixed. In fact, I've voted for all three main parties. I voted Liberal Democrat, I think, in the general elections up to 2019 when I voted Labour, but not because of Jeremy Corbyn, because of my local MP. I made a video about that then. I even voted Tory once for local police commissioner. That's the only time I voted Tory. Um, so that's pretty much, I suppose, reflective of my centrist politics. The Liberal Democrats should be the natural party of the centre in Britain. They've greatly declined. I feel that they aren't really the sort of centrists that I would like. I think they're too politically correct. I think they are too much like a lot of the left, feeling they need to pander to identity politics and uh, the sort of issues that come with that. I don't think they have been good in standing up for liberal values. For example, when it comes to standing up to cultural clashes, like for instance, Islamic attitudes to, well, there was an incident made me very angry when the Liberal Democrats suspended a councillor for no other reason than he had rightly said that it was troubling that young children were being made to wear the hijab, and for that he was suspended from the party. Now, to me, that was symbolic of their utter failure to stand up for liberal values. Um, so I don't have much respect for the Liberal Democrats today. I'm not saying anything against Ed Davey personally, but the party, I just think they're too politically correct. I don't think that they're the sort of liberal democratic party that I would want to see. Um, but what I want to talk really is about the idea of being independent. Now, we have a little bit of a history in this country of independent politics. There was journalist Martin Bell, who famously stood as an independent and won his seat, kept his seat, but then bizarrely he tried to create a sort of group of independents in Parliament, which was kind of self-defeating in a sense. Um, Also, with the 2019 UK general election, I think it was the 2019 election. It was Change UK, which kind of fizzled out into nothing. I think it was badly organised. I think it could have been something where you had disaffected Tories, disaffected Labour. I think it could have worked itself into a good centrist party if they joined with the Liberal Democrats, but it just seemed a bit disorganised. And the name Change UK was a ridiculous name. It's just too abstract, and it didn't really represent change. So there was a lot of problems and flaws with that movement, and it's a pity because it would have been good to have a real strong centrist force out there. I think Labour under Keir Starmer might once again be going in that direction, so I'll be paying close attention to Starmer's leadership. But here's the thing with party politics, you have to toe the line to an extent. I mean, with big political parties, you are going to get plurality of opinions. You see this in the Conservatives, in Labour, in the Democrats, and the Republicans, and that's a good thing. They should be big tents. But I also feel that it's difficult to be truly outspoken on issues that you feel very strongly about if they don't tie into the party line. Um, some of the things I feel strongly about, I don't think I would be selected as a candidate for a mainstream party because some of my views would be deemed to be a little bit provocative or politically incorrect. Now, I've never said anything that anyone can really rationally, fairly deem to be racist, homophobic, or sexist, but I have touched on uncomfortable subjects. I've been very candid in my views, and politicians today, with a few exceptions, they have to be polished and speak in a certain way, and I don't really like it. I understand that a political party has to have a certain direction, so you can't just have lots of people saying loads of different things. I understand that a party has to have a sort of collective principles and collective policies, but that's what puts me off primarily party politics, because I feel that you do have to toe the line a bit. Um, and I wonder, does that mean that certain sincerity is sacrificed? I think it does. But the problem is, standing as an independent, getting elected as an independent is very difficult for a few reasons. Firstly, you're going up against the party system. Secondly, the public themselves would say, well, what does this guy believe in? He's not Labour, he's not Tory, he's not Lib Dem, he's not Brexit Party. What does he stand for? I mean, I don't believe that's the case. I believe someone can have strong policy positions as an independent. The other question, of course, is what can they get done? I think the most realistic approach for an independent is to use the force of their arguments, maybe charisma. If they're, for example, already a public figure, maybe they're a celebrity, work with existing political parties to get things done. But you have the freedom of not being part of the party system. In other words, you can lobby, you can petition, you can work with existing parties saying, this is important, we need to get it done. I'm also a free man, a free woman, and these are my positions. Um, so I'm going to support you if you do this, I'm going to oppose you if you do that. I think that's the only option that independents really have. But I'm not so cynical. I believe independents, if they are smart enough, if they're charismatic enough, they can show up support. An interesting case example might be the mayoralty of London. Now, the mayor of London is the most powerful uh, individually elected position. The prime minister is obviously the most powerful politician in the country, but the mayor of London actually has the largest personal mandate. So it's a very interesting position. And there was a few years ago, I think in the last mayoral election, the third candidate, forget her name now, but she done reasonably well. Okay, she was well behind Sadiq Khan and Goldsmith, but considering she was an independent, she done reasonably well. So it's interesting to look at case studies of that. Of course, what independents need to rely on is if there is enough dissatisfaction in a particular jurisdiction with the two big parties, which in this country is the Conservative and Labour parties. So it is very difficult, very difficult. But I think the advantages of it from a candidate's point of view is you really, really can be yourself in the law. And that's very tempting. So just something to think about.